Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Carper, and members of the committee. I'm glad to be back with the committee. It's absolutely an honor to discuss these issues that are important to the citizens in my state and across the nation, and I'll do my best here today to meet the committee's needs on this particular piece of legislation. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to open by passing along the sincere appreciation of the President of the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission, Keith Culver. I spoke with Keith here in the last couple of days, and he's actually today presiding over a Wyoming Game and Fish Commission meeting in a town you're very familiar with, in Afton, Wyoming. And they are actually discussing some of the same issues that we will discuss here today. The Commission did want to pass along, though, their appreciation for yours and the committee's work on wildlife type legislation over the last several months. Mr. Chairman, as you're keenly aware, Wyoming is home to a rich and diverse wildlife resource that is valued by an equally rich and diverse constituency. Much of the state's wildlife habitats remain in pristine condition and continue to provide wide open spaces and remote wild country for western iconic species like sage grouse, grizzly bears, moose, gray wolves, pronghorn antelope, and elk. These resources directly affect and influence the quality of life for Wyoming citizens and visitors from all over the globe. As I analyzed the key provisions of this bill, two things struck me about the overarching themes. Firstly, there is a reliance on the underlying trust in the abilities of states to make decisions regarding important issues affecting their citizenry. Secondly, the bill places priority on and provides resources for America's fish and wildlife resources and the places that they live. Wyoming citizens take very seriously their trust responsibility for the management of all wildlife within its borders. State leaders have invested significant resources and inspired a conservation ethic in all of its endeavors. Wyomingites pride themselves on balancing conservation with economic development and maintaining a quality of life that reflects their most deeply held Western values. One of those most important values is the reliance on state management of those wildlife occupying habitats within the boundaries of the state. Section 8 of this act and its provisions to preserve wolves in a delisted status in Wyoming provides a mechanism to provide the state with predictability and commitment. Predictability, the state will be able to focus on managing the gray wolf, and commitment that as Wyoming maintains a healthy and viable recovered gray wolf population, that it will be able to continue its management uninterrupted. The gray wolf population in our state has been recovered since 2002, and the service has now on 3 occasions published a rule that definitively states wolves are recovered and that federal management is no longer needed. For over 15 years, Wyoming citizens have been extremely patient while the service and the courts have wrestled with the status of a recovered population of wildlife within the Wyoming's borders. The citizens of the state are ready for predictability and commitments that ensure state management into the future, and this bill provides that. During the 2 years when Wyoming managed wolves under its current wolf management plan, its wolf population thrived and remained far above recovery criteria. In fact, wolf populations and the number of breeding pairs occupying suitable habitats remained over 70% above the minimum requirements of the ESA. Because not all habitats are biologically and socially suitable, there is a need to manage wolves and mitigate conflicts between wolves and livestock and private property owners. The state's track record is strong in its management of these conflicts, and during the 2 years when Wyoming managed the population, there are an average of 35 wolves removed by our agency consequential to livestock damage each year. Last year, under the authority of the Fish and Wildlife Service, federal managers removed at least 113 wolves in control actions in response to livestock depredation. As currently written, this act reserves the responsibility for the service to relist Wyoming's gray wolf population if it becomes threatened or endangered in the future. The ESA mandates that the service's evaluation of all potential emerging threats or changing science and requires specific actions if recovery is not maintained. Despite the facts that the courts have taken or have been the lead in relisting species, they are not required to relist species, and this bill does not inhibit the responsibility of the service to continue to oversee for the post-delisting monitoring period the wolf population in Wyoming. In Idaho and Montana, where delisting was achieved through congressional action, state management remains intact today, and the 5-year post-delisting monitoring requirement of the ESA has expired. Both states continue to manage a fully recovered gray wolf population, and there no longer exists any federal oversight. Germane to the core tenets of the ESA is its intent and stated goal to recover and delist endangered species. And again, the provisions of this bill in Section 8 that provide certainty to future management of Wyoming wolves is welcome. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would also like to provide my concise thoughts on other very important components of this bill. As I stated early in my opening comments, this bill provides a priority on the protection and enhancement of wildlife habitats across America. The reauthorization of the North American Wetland Conservation Act, also known as NACA, is reflective of the priority Americans place on wildlife and wild places. In one project in our state, in the Upper Green River Basin in western Wyoming, NACA was used in a big way for its intended purpose, and a $1 million NACA grant awarded to the Wyoming Game and Fish in 2013 protected and enhanced over 16,000 acres of critical habitat in the Pacific Flyway, benefiting wildlife and their habitats. Also important in that is the fact that partners were able to match federal dollars by nearly $3 million. Mr. Chairman, there are several other provisions of this bill where I offer additional perspective in my full written testimony, and I look forward to answering yours and the committee's questions. Thank you.